Imagine a horizon where the sea and the sky dissolve into the same shade of gray, and behind that horizon, the world's next conflict could begin. Here lies the Philippines, a vast constellation of more than 7,000 islands scattered across the heart of the Pacific. For centuries, this archipelago has been both a bridge and a battleground, a crossroad of commerce, empire, and ambition. And now, once again, it stands at the edge of a geopolitical storm. The partnership between the United States Marine Corps and the Philippine Marine Corps is one of the oldest and most enduring military alliances in modern history. It was not built overnight, and it was never a matter of convenience. It was born from war, tested by distance, and sustained by the shared belief that security in the Pacific cannot exist without cooperation. These two forces, separated by an ocean yet bound by history, operate with a single mission: to preserve peace, protect sovereignty, and deter aggression across a region where tension rises like the tide. The roots of this cooperation trace back to 1951. The Second World War had ended, but the Pacific was far from calm. The Korean peninsula was burning, and the specter of the Cold War loomed large. It was then that Washington and Manila signed the Mutual Defense Treaty, a compact that declared, if one nation were attacked, the other would come to its aid. It was not just a political statement. It was a military commitment written in the language of deterrence. Through this agreement, the Philippines became a cornerstone of American strategy in Asia. For the United States, the islands represented a forward defense line, a chain of outposts stretching from Hawaii to Japan, from Okinawa to Luzon. For the Philippines, the treaty meant something even more profound: protection from external threats and the assurance that, in a dangerous world, it would never stand alone. In the decades that followed, this alliance evolved. It adapted to shifting global realities: the end of colonial empires, the rise of regional nationalism, the wars in Vietnam and Korea, and the long, uneasy peace that followed. American bases like Clark and Subic Bay became familiar names not just to soldiers, but to local communities. Generations of Marines trained together, shared rations, rebuilt schools, and built a form of trust that went far beyond the formalities of government. Then, in the early 1990s, that trust was tested. Political winds shifted, and the United States withdrew its permanent forces from the Philippines. For a time, the alliance seemed to fade. But history has a way of circling back. As tensions in the South China Sea grew, and as new powers expanded their reach into the Western Pacific, Manila once again turned to its oldest ally. The response was swift and strategic. In 2014, the two nations signed the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, EDCA. It was not a return to the era of permanent American bases, but something more flexible, more adaptive. The agreement allowed U.S. troops to rotate through Philippine facilities, to pre-position equipment, and to train side by side with local forces. It marked the start of a new phase, one that combined deterrence with diplomacy, presence with partnership. Through EDCA, the United States and the Philippines built a system that was less about occupation and more about readiness. Marine aircraft like the MV-22 Osprey began operating from Philippine runways. Joint command centers linked satellite data, radar systems, and real-time maritime surveillance. American logistics met Filipino knowledge of terrain, tides, and weather, creating a hybrid force capable of responding to everything from military threats to natural disasters. Today, this cooperation is not measured in speeches or headlines, but in quiet precision. Every year, thousands of soldiers from both nations participate in exercises with names that carry meaning. Balikatan, meaning shoulder to shoulder. Command Dog, Sama-sama. On the beaches of Zambales, armored vehicles roll through the surf under the tropical sun. From the air, Ospreys tilt and descend toward mock landing zones carved from coral and sand. Radar screens flicker with simulated intrusions, and communication lines hum with orders exchanged in English and Tagalog. These are not parades, they are rehearsals, for events that both sides hope will never come. Scenarios of missile strikes, maritime incursions, or island takeovers are studied, practiced, and refined. The U.S. Marines bring their experience in amphibious warfare, advanced weapon systems, and real-time command coordination. The Philippine Marines contribute something equally essential: their deep understanding of local geography, their adaptability to tropical terrain, and their close relationship with the civilian communities that live along the coastlines. Together, they build what strategists call interoperability, but what soldiers simply call trust. It is the kind of coordination that cannot be taught in classrooms. It must be lived, trained, and tested under heat, wind, and rain. It is what allows two different militaries to act as one when the moment demands it. Yet this alliance is not defined only by war games. The same Marines who prepare for conflict are often the first to respond to disaster. The Philippines sits on the Pacific Ring of Fire, a region where typhoons, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions strike with devastating frequency. When nature turns violent, the uniforms that once patrolled coastlines turn towards saving lives. After Super Typhoon Haiyan, one of the strongest storms in recorded history, it was the combined logistics of the US and Philippine Marines that delivered aid to isolated communities. Helicopters that once carried troops began airlifting food and medicine. Amphibious vehicles turned into lifelines across flooded villages. The partnership that was designed to deter war became, in those moments, a bridge of humanity. In the eyes of local families, the sight of Marines, American and Filipino, carrying children through the water, setting up tents, or restoring power lines, became a powerful symbol of solidarity. It showed that this alliance is not just about defense, but about endurance, about standing shoulder to shoulder, not only in battle, but in rebuilding. Behind every joint operation lies an unspoken truth. This cooperation is not static. It evolves with each generation. What began as a response to the threats of the 20th century has transformed into a dynamic framework for the 21st. It now includes not just amphibious drills, but cybersecurity programs, satellite coordination, and the protection of undersea communication cables that carry the world's data. The partnership between the United States and the Philippines has become a mirror of the region itself, complex, adaptive, and resilient. It operates quietly, often far from the cameras, but its impact stretches across the Pacific. It ensures that global trade keeps moving, that maritime borders remain watched, and that small nations retain the right to stand their ground in an increasingly contested sea. As night falls over the western coast of Luzon, radar screens glow in the darkness. Somewhere beyond the horizon, unknown vessels trace slow arcs across the sea. And on the shore, two Marine forces, one American, one Filipino, remain awake, watching, training, ready. Their alliance is not just written in treaties or carved into history. It is alive, shaped every day by those who carry it forward, in silence, in discipline, and in the belief that peace, to endure, must always be defended. Dawn breaks over the South China Sea, and the horizon shimmers with heat and uncertainty. From above, the expanse looks calm, turquoise waters stretching endlessly toward the Pacific. But beneath the surface, satellites track movements, sonar buoys hum, and the pulse of modern geopolitics beats in quiet frequency. This is not an empty sea. It is one of the most contested regions on Earth, and every wave carries the weight of strategy. For the Philippines, these waters are home, a lifeline of trade, food, and national identity. For others, they are corridors of power, pathways to projection, and stepping stones of influence. Between coral reefs and submerged ridges, a silent struggle unfolds, one defined not by gunfire, but by patrol routes, radar locks, and competing claims of sovereignty. In this charged environment, the cooperation between the United States Marine Corps and the Philippine Marine Corps has become more than military partnership. It is a statement, a living symbol of balance, deterrence, and mutual survival. The tension that shapes this region is not new. Decades of unresolved boundaries, overlapping economic zones, and artificial island building have turned the South China Sea into a map of friction. Concrete airstrips rise from reefs that once barely touched the tide. Surveillance towers, missile batteries, and runways now dot what was once open ocean. Every construction site carries a message. Power here is measured not only by diplomacy, but by presence. For Washington, this part of the world represents a test of principle. The United States has long advocated for a free and open Indo-Pacific, a region where trade routes remain accessible and sovereignty is respected. For Manila, it is not a theoretical concept. It is daily reality. Filipino fishermen navigate waters now crowded by foreign vessels, sometimes shadowed, sometimes blocked. Radar screens along Luzon light up with unidentified signatures, and Coast Guard cutters find themselves face-to-face with ships flying unfamiliar flags. It is in this fragile balance that the US-Philippine alliance finds its sharpest meaning. Their joint patrols, coordinated exercises, and intelligence exchanges serve as both a deterrent and a reassurance. American aircraft provide early warning. Philippine units hold the ground. Together, they form a layered defense, one that signals resolve without provocation. Each operation sends a subtle but unmistakable message. The Philippines will not stand isolated, and the Pacific will not be surrendered by silence. Inside the command rooms where these missions are planned, screens display a choreography of data: ship positions, flight paths, ocean currents, weather systems. Algorithms predict possible encounters. Maps shift in real time. This is modern deterrence, a war fought in preparation, in readiness, in the invisible domain of awareness. The Marines' role is to translate this awareness into credible defense, and to ensure that coordination remains seamless across languages, cultures, and chains of command. But the alliance also carries weight beyond the battlefield. Its presence influences diplomacy, trade negotiations, and regional confidence. Smaller nations, Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, observe closely. For them, the US-Philippine partnership is a signal that alliances can endure even under pressure, that sovereignty can be protected without direct confrontation. It sets a model for what collective resilience can look like in the 21st century. Still, the relationship is not without challenges. Critics in Manila sometimes argue that too much reliance on Washington risks limiting the Philippines' autonomy. Others fear that hosting foreign troops could draw the country into conflicts not of its choosing. American policymakers, in turn, must navigate domestic debates about commitments abroad and the limits of deterrence. Yet both sides understand a deeper truth: that disengagement would invite instability, and that the cost of peace is constant vigilance. Beyond politics, the Marines' cooperation extends into the human dimension, where it touches lives far from the noise of strategy. In remote coastal towns, Filipino Marines work alongside their American counterparts to build evacuation centers, repair schools, and train local responders. When typhoons approach, joint rapid response teams are on standby with aircraft ready for medical evacuation and humanitarian delivery. These missions rarely make headlines, yet they define the quiet strength of the alliance. It is this duality, deterrence and compassion, readiness and recovery, that makes the partnership resilient. It shows that power is not measured only in firepower, but in trust, in the ability to act quickly and together when crisis strikes. Over the years, the sight of U.S. aircraft landing on Philippine soil during disasters has ceased to be foreign. It has become expected, almost routine, an unspoken reassurance that help will come when needed. As global power shifts, the alliance itself is evolving. New agreements under EDCA envision stronger logistics hubs, integrated radar networks, and real-time communication links connecting the Philippines directly to U.S. Indo-Pacific Command in Hawaii. Artificial intelligence now assists in maritime analysis, identifying patterns of movement that once took days to process. Drone fleets expand surveillance reach over vast stretches of ocean, and naval exercises simulate multi-domain operations that include cyber and electronic warfare. In the future, this partnership is expected to extend even further, into the realms of environmental security, technological cooperation, and maritime law enforcement. Both nations recognize that defense today is not confined to weapons, but to the protection of critical infrastructure, digital systems, and natural resources. From coral preservation programs to anti-smuggling patrols, Marines increasingly find themselves engaged in missions that blend defense with stewardship. And yet, for all its modernization, the alliance remains grounded in something older, a sense of shared duty. In the barracks of Palawan and Subic, American and Filipino soldiers eat together, train together, and sometimes fall silent watching the same horizon. They may speak different languages, but the rhythm of discipline, the pulse of routine, is the same. In their eyes lies a quiet understanding that their presence, however small it may seem, is part of something far larger, the preservation of balance in a world that leans toward chaos. As the sun sets over the Pacific, the line between peace and conflict remains thin. Cargo ships pass through narrow straits under the watch of unseen satellites. Offshore rigs flare against the night. Somewhere in the darkness, patrol vessels move slowly, their radar beams sweeping the water in measured arcs. On a small island outpost, Marines keep watch, their silhouettes framed against the glow of navigation lights and the sound of distant waves. They do not speak of treaties or geopolitics. They think of families, of duty, of the long chain of those who stood before them. The alliance they serve is not an abstract policy. It is a living commitment carried out every day, in silence, in endurance, and in faith that vigilance itself can be an act of peace. For more than 70 years, the United States and the Philippines have stood shoulder to shoulder, in war, in recovery, and in the uncertain calm between. Their cooperation has become part of the Pacific's rhythm, woven into the tides of history. And as the world changes, one truth remains constant. Alliances endure not because of documents or speeches, but because of the people who choose, day after day, to uphold them. The horizon still holds its secrets. The sea still conceals its risks. But as long as two nations share the belief that freedom of navigation is worth defending, and that peace requires presence, the alliance between their marines will stand, not as a relic of the past, but as a living promise for the future.